As we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Fellowship of the Ring's release in theaters, Lord of the Rings has a lot happening, with The Hunt for Gollum, Fate of the Fellowship, extended edition of The Lord of the Rings coming to some places in the theater, and recent releases like The War of the Rohirrim and Rings of Power. For the Tolkien fan who wants to take The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings to an epic scale on the board, while also encompassing the entire story, Ares Games has a trio of games that works together to tell the story starting after the desolation of Smaug: the Battle of Five Armies, Hunt for the Ring, and War of the Ring. While they each play differently, these games can be played in sequence, with Five Armies and Hunt for the Ring having possible impacts on the War of the Ring gameplay. Let's start with the Battle of Five Armies. This is a two-player game that happens at the foot of Erebor and the city of Dale. Armies of men, dwarves, and elves have gathered to dispute who gets the treasures of the mountain, while they are ambushed by armies of goblins and orcs. The men, dwarves, and elves need to survive the onslaught of the armies of Sauron, using the strength of their characters and leaders to defeat their enemy. The Shadow Armies of the Dark Lord will try to overrun the free peoples of Middle-earth to win a decisive victory. The game is primarily focused on taking territories and winning battles on the battlefield. The actions players take will be impacted by die rolls that determine what they can do on a given turn. To win this game, the Shadow player needs to have 10 or more victory points at the end of the turn, or they immediately win if they have the 10 victory points while controlling the front gate. How do they get these victory points? Holding fortifications gets 4 points each. The fortifications are Rivendell, the front gate, and the eastern spur. Other settlements are each worth 2 points. Those settlements are the Ruins of Dale, Camp, Lower Slopes, and Fallen Bridge. Winning for the Free Peoples requires survival or destroying the leader of the Shadow Army. The Free Peoples win immediately when they eliminate Bolg, when the character Bjorn enters play, and the Shadow player has less than 6 victory points, or if the fate marker reaches 15. If players want to connect this game to War of the Ring, a win by the Free Peoples player results in no change in the game for War of the Ring, as that is the story result. But if the Shadow Army wins the Battle of Five Armies, they control Erebor, and the Fate of Erebor expansion can be integrated into the War of the Ring game, turning Erebor into a Shadow stronghold, Dale into a neutral fortification, and the Iron Hills into a dwarven city. The setup and a few cards are a little different, making subtle changes on the battlefield that plays out in the War of the Ring. After the end of the Battle of the Five Armies, Bilbo Baggins, the new owner of the One Ring, returned home in peace, or so he thought. For the next 60 years, he owned the ring in the Shire before passing it on to his nephew Frodo. 17 years later, Frodo begins his journey from the Shire to Rivendell, fraught with peril. It is in this setting that the Hunt for the Ring is played. Hunt for the Ring is a completely different style game than the other two. Instead of being armies battling in the battlefield, Hunt for the Ring is a secret movement game where one player makes moves on their own hidden board to represent Frodo's, the ring bearer, incognito journey from the Shire to Bree, and then to Rivendell. The other players take on the role of the Ringwraiths, searching for Frodo with intent to capture him and return the One Ring to their master Sauron. The game is played in 2 halves, with the first endpoint at the Prancing Pony at Bree, then the board is flipped over and the second half continues on to Rivendell. The Ringwraiths win if Frodo is corrupted as events of the game occur. There are factors that increase the threshold for corruption throughout the game, and as the Ringwraiths find the Ringbearer, that corruption level increases. Frodo wins if he reaches the end of the track in Part 2. The game immediately ends at that point. If players want the War of the Ring playthrough to be impacted by the Hunt for the Ring, the Shadow player will receive action tokens for use in War of the Ring dependent on when Frodo was corrupted in their win, or if Frodo reaches Rivendell without any company cards. And the Free Peoples player receives action tokens for the War of the Ring if Frodo reaches Rivendell, and the amount of tokens received is dependent on how many company cards Frodo is holding at the end of the game. Which brings us to War of the Ring. During the Council of Elrond in Rivendell, the decision is made to destroy the One Ring. 9 companions set out in secret to do so. While they journey to Mordor to attempt to destroy the ring, much of the world of Free Peoples is either unaware or uncaring that the Shadow Armies of Mordor and Isengard gather to war against Middle-earth. For the Shadow player, much of the game is focused on sending armies across Middle-earth to capture strongholds and settlements to achieve victory. But while doing so, the Shadow player also knows that the ring has set out from Rivendell, and resources can be expended to find the ring and capture the ring bearer. The Shadow player wins when the ring bearers reach 12 corruption points, allowing Sauron to reclaim the ring and his source of power. This can happen whether the ring bearers falter along the journey or at the precipice of Mount Doom. Alternatively, the Shadow player wins when they reach 10 victory points. In this game, enemy strongholds are worth 2 victory points and the enemy settlements are worth 1 victory point. The Free Peoples player also has 2 paths to victory. If the ring bearers reach the Crack of Doom step on the corruption track and they have less than 12 corruption, they win the game. Winning on the battlefield is more challenging for the Free Peoples player, as many of their armies throughout Middle-earth are not at war and cannot be rallied to fight. So either they need to be attacked, or the Free Peoples player needs to divert some of the members of the Fellowship to try to convince the different groups that they need to join the battle against the Shadow player. Also, unlike the Shadow army, which can continually replenish its troops, after the limited number of reinforcements for the Free Peoples are expended, the replacement troops end. That being said, if the Free Peoples player controls 4 victory points from their opponent, they win the game. The Lord of the Rings is one of the greatest stories that has ever been told. The War of the Ring is an epic-scale version of both the journey of the Fellowship as well as the war raging in Middle-earth at the same time. The Battle of Five Armies and Hunt for the Ring linked the Hobbit and the beginning of Frodo's journey, expanding into an even grander telling of the tale. While War of the Ring is a masterpiece itself, the other 2 games are great for people who like story-driven gaming. Ares has done a good job creating impacts on War of the Ring from the results of the prior games without completely throwing off the balance by doing so. Tell me about your experiences playing any of these games in the comments below, or what other Lord of the Rings games you enjoy. Also, let me know if you would be interested in how to play videos for this wonderful series from Ares Games. In the words of Samwise Gamgee, there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.